The forest knew him before she did. The trees bowed, not in reverence, but fear. Roots recoiled beneath the earth as his boots touched the soil. Ancient magic recognizing something older than its own memory. Night creatures fled. The wind stilled. Even the moon dimmed, as if unwilling to witness him return to wolf territory. Kavari Nightborn had not crossed into a wolf-pack's land in over 3 centuries. And yet the moment he did, his chest burned. Not hunger, not rage, recognition. He stopped at the edge of the clearing, breath unnecessary yet unsteady, witch blood thrumming beneath dead veins. His power, vast enough to bend cities, surged instinctively, searching. Then he saw her. She stood barefoot in the grass, sleeves rolled to her elbows, moonlight painting silver into her dark curls. There was blood on her hands, animal blood, fresh, honest. A hunt she had just completed, a life taken to feed the pack. She laughed at something one of the younger wolves said, the sound soft and unguarded. Kavari felt something inside him split. Her laugh struck him like a memory he did not have the right to remember. He had watched empires burn without flinching. He had murdered kings who begged. He had survived curses designed to unmake gods. But that sound, that voice... His knees nearly buckled. No, it cannot be her. And yet, every drop of witch blood in him screamed the same truth. Her soul had found him again. Nyxara turned, not because she sensed him, not because of instinct, because fate is cruel, and sometimes it wants to be seen. Her gaze collided with his. The clearing shattered. The wolves froze, hackles rising, instincts howling danger. Magic snapped like lightning through the air as Kavari's presence fully unfolded. Centuries of terror condensed into a single man standing in the shadows. Nyxara's breath caught. Not in fear, in confusion, because the monster before her looked at her like a man who had just found a grave with his own name carved into it. "Who are you?" she demanded, spine straight, chin lifted, brave in the reckless way only wolves could be. Her heart pounded. He heard it. It took everything in him not to fall to his knees. He took a single step forward. The pack reacted instantly. Growls, shifting bones, claws emerging. But Kavari lifted one hand, power blooming effortlessly. "Enough," he said softly. The wolves stilled, every single one of them, compelled, dominated, helpless, all except her. Nyxara blinked, looked around, saw her pack frozen mid-motion. Then she looked back at him, eyes blazing, not with fear, but fury. "What did you do?" she hissed. Kavari's breath caught. He had not touched her mind. He frowned, just slightly. Impossible. "No," he murmured, voice breaking the night. "That isn't..." He reached for her consciousness. Nothing happened. Her mind stood untouched, sealed. Ancient magic coiled around her soul like a promise kept across lifetimes. The curse stirred, cold, laughing. Nyxara took a step back, hand instinctively going to the blade at her thigh. "You're a vampire," she spat. "Whatever you want, you won't get it here." Kavari looked at her like a man staring at the sun after centuries of darkness. "I want nothing from you," he said hoarsely. That was the lie that destroyed him. Because what he wanted was everything. Her love, her memory. her forgiveness for a death she didn't remember, and a promise he never broke. She scoffed. "Then leave." He should have. Gods help him. He should have turned away and burned the world from afar like he always did. Instead, he whispered her name, not the one she used now, the one she had died with on her lips. Nyxara stiffened. Her breath stuttered. "How do you know that name?" she asked, suddenly quiet. Moonlight caught the tears in Kavari's eyes, tears he had not shed in 6 centuries. "I have loved you," he said, voice trembling with a restraint that could break continents, longer than this world has remembered how to keep promises. Silence swallowed the clearing. Nyxara's chest ached for reasons she could not name. Hate warred with something far more dangerous. Familiarity. She lifted her chin, voice shaking despite her will. "I don't care who you think I was," she said. "I am not her." Kavari nodded. "I know," he whispered. That was the tragedy. Because even reborn, even defiant, even sworn against him, his soul still answered to hers, and if she ever chose him freely, the world would bleed. Kavari Nightborn had learned, over centuries, how to survive anything. He survived a fire that burned witches to ash. He survived silver being driven into his heart. He survived betrayal, famine, war, and the slow rot of immortality. What he never survived was watching her die, again and again. The first time had broken him. She had been human then, soft-voiced, fierce-hearted, a witch's daughter with moonlight in her veins and laughter that ruined him. She loved him before she knew what he was, and when she did, she loved him anyway. That was his undoing. She paid the price for loving him. That night, witches cursed him. "You will live forever. You will never forget her. But your love for her will always bring her doom." He spent a century drowning the world in blood. The second time, she was born among wolves. He felt her then too, a soft ache beneath his ribs, a pull he did not understand at first. When he found her, she was wild and laughing, her hands always stained with earth and prey. She hated vampires instinctively. He watched from the shadows, refusing to interfere, terrified that loving her again would doom her faster. He told himself distance was protection. He was wrong. Rogue hunters came for her pack, men armed with silver and holy fire. Kavari arrived in time to kill them all, but not in time to save her. She died in his arms, chest torn open, blood soaking into his coat as she struggled to breathe. With her last breath, she recognized him, remembered him, not his face, his soul. Her shaking hand had fisted into his shirt, claws weak, eyes dimming. "You found me," she whispered. He pressed his forehead to hers, shaking, power useless for the first time in his existence. "I will always find you," he promised, voice breaking. "I swear it." She smiled and died. He screamed until mountains cracked. The third time, he never even reached her. She was born during a war between covens and packs. She was an ordinary human, just at the wrong place at the wrong time. A wolf's claw took her head before she could speak his name. before her soul had time to awaken fully. Kavari felt her death like a knife dragged slowly through his chest. He slaughtered an entire pack that night, not out of rage, out of grief so deep it no longer had shape. After that, he stopped looking. He convinced himself that loving her was the curse, that finding her only hastened her end. For 500 years he turned his back on hope, until the forest burned again, until her laugh cut through him like memory-given breath, until Nyxara. Kavari stood alone now, far from the clearing, leaning against the trunk of a dead tree. The wolves were safe. He had compelled every predator, human or otherwise, within 10 miles to forget the pack's existence. He should leave. He knew he should leave. But the image of her eyes, defiant, furious, confused, would not release him. She was older this time, stronger. A wolf by blood, not accident. The old witches had done something different, and worse. She could not be compelled. That meant the prophecy had shifted, or awakened. Nyxara, meanwhile, sat by the fire with her pack, hands trembling despite herself. She told them she was fine. She lied, because her chest hurt in a way claws could not reach, because when the vampire had said her name, that other name, something inside her had cried out in recognition. She had dreamed that night, of dying in his arms, of loving him in bodies that never lasted, of a man kneeling in blood, begging the heavens not to take her again. She woke up with tears on her face, tears she did not remember shedding, and somewhere in the dark, Kavari Nightborn pressed his hand to his chest and realized with terror and hope entwined. This time, fate had given her time, and if he failed her again, there would be nothing left of him to curse. Nyxara had always trusted her instincts. They had kept her alive through winters that starved weaker wolves, through fights she should have lost, through nights when the forest itself felt wrong. But this was different. She woke before dawn with a scream lodged in her throat and tears soaking her pillow, heart racing as if she had been running for days. Her hands shook, not from fear, from grief, and the worst part was that she didn't know who she was grieving. She swung her legs off the bed and pressed her palms to her chest, breathing hard. "I don't know you," she whispered into the quiet room, but her body disagreed, because her dreams had been full of him, not the monster from the clearing, the man. A man kneeling in the rain, blood on his hands, whispering her name like a prayer already broken. A man holding her as she died, not once, but again and again. His face unchanged, while hers faded through lifetimes. She had felt his tears on her skin, felt the way he loved like it was the only thing keeping him from becoming something far worse. Nyxara scrubbed at her face angrily. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. Vampires did not inspire this kind of sorrow. They inspired rage, death, fear, not longing. Kavari stood at the edge of the pack's territory, unmoving, as dawn crept across the sky. He did not sleep. He hadn't slept since the night he lost her the second time. Instead, he listened. To the forest. To her heartbeat. To the way her breath stuttered when she dreamed of him. He felt it when she woke up. The sudden spike of emotion nearly dropped him to his knees. pain, raw and sharp. Guilt twisted in his chest. He had sworn never to burden her with memory again. And yet her soul was waking on its own. That terrified him more than any enemy ever had. "Not yet," he whispered to the wind. "Please, not yet." Because once she remembered fully, she would understand what loving him had cost her, and she might hate him for it. The pack noticed her distraction. Wolves always did. "You're pacing," her beta, Mara, observed later that day. "That's usually my job." Nyxara forced a smile. "Didn't sleep well." "That vampire," another wolf muttered. "He rattled everyone." Nyxara stiffened. "He didn't touch us." "That's what worries me," Mara said quietly. "Nothing that powerful comes without a price." Nyxara looked away, because something in her already knew the truth. He wasn't here to take. He was here because he had already lost. The second night, the danger came. It always did. A hunter crossed the boundary just after moonrise. Silver-tipped bolts, holy markings carved into his skin. He was skilled, careful, deadly. He never reached the clearing. Kavari tore his spine from his body in silence. The third hunter died before he could scream. The fourth managed one prayer before Kavari crushed his skull. The vampire stood among the bodies, blood dripping from his hands, chest heaving, not from exertion, but fear, because this was exactly how it had started before. Always protection, always blood, always too late. Nyxara felt it. The moment the first hunter died, her wolf surged to the surface, claws itching, instincts screaming. Danger. She shifted mid-run, bones snapping, fur ripping through skin as she tore through the forest. She arrived to find him standing there. Not feeding, not reveling, just standing, shoulders slumped, staring at the dead like they were a personal failure. Their eyes met. Again. This time he didn't hide. Nyxara shifted back, naked and shaking, fury blazing through confusion. "You promised to leave," she said hoarsely. "I promised nothing," he replied gently. "I only said I wanted nothing from you." She laughed bitterly. "That's a lie." His jaw tightened. "Yes," he admitted. "It is." The honesty disarmed her more than compulsion ever could. "Why are you here?" she demanded. "Why do I dream of you like you're something I lost?" Kavari took a step closer, slow, careful, like approaching a wounded animal. "Because you did," he said, "and because I failed you." Her heart slammed against her ribs. "Stop," she whispered. "Stop saying things that make me—" "What?" he asked softly. She swallowed. Ache, break, want. "I don't want you," she said, even as tears blurred her vision. Kavari's eyes darkened with something like agony. "I know," he said. "That is why I love you." The words shattered something inside her. Her knees gave out. He caught her instinctively and froze. He did not pull her closer, did not claim, did not compel. He held her like something sacred and dangerous, trembling as if touching her hurt. Nyxara pressed her face into his chest before she could stop herself. And when she began to cry, not in fear, not in pain, but in sorrow she could not name, Kavari closed his eyes. Not in triumph, in terror. because he knew. The prophecy had begun to breathe, and this time, if she remembered everything, loving him might destroy her just like always. The first time Nyxara died, it was by Kavari's hand, not by cruelty, not by malice, by fear. They came for him at dusk, a mob of humans armed with torches, iron blades, prayers they barely understood. They screamed his name like it was a curse, eyes wide with terror at the monster they believed he was. Kavari tried to leave. He always did. But fear is loud, and hatred is reckless. The first blade struck his shoulder, the second cut deep, the third never landed, because something ancient and furious snapped inside him. He turned, and the night answered. Power exploded outward, raw and uncontrolled. Men were flung aside like broken dolls, bones shattered, blood sprayed the earth as Kavari moved through them, not thinking, not feeling, only reacting. Kill or be killed, survive, end the threat. And then she ran. Nyxara had been behind him, screaming his name, her magic flaring desperately as she saw the terror unfold. She didn't see a monster. She saw the man she loved losing himself. "Kavari!" she cried, running into the chaos. "Stop! Please!" She reached him just as his power surged again. She stepped in front of him. Not to fight. To protect them. To protect him from becoming something he could never come back from. "Kavari, it's me!" she pleaded, hands raised. "Look at me!" But he wasn't looking. Rage had swallowed his sight. Fear had drowned reason. The world was enemies and blood and fire. He saw movement. He struck. The force was immense, reflexive, brutal, unthinking. Nyxara's body lifted off the ground as if thrown by the hand of a god. Time slowed. Kavari heard the sound before he understood it. The sickening crack of bone against stone. Her head struck the rock at the edge of the clearing, and her body crumpled unnaturally, magic flickering out like a candle in wind. Silence fell. The humans fled, screams fading into the forest. But Kavari didn't see them go. He saw her. Still. Too still. The rage vanished instantly, horror crashing into him so violently he fell to his knees. "No," he whispered. He was at her side in a heartbeat, hands trembling as he gathered her broken body into his arms. "No, no, no, Alethea, please." He tried everything. He poured his blood into her, witch blood burning through his veins. He pressed his hand to her head, begging magic to reverse what had been done. But death had been instant. There was no soul left to call back. Her eyes stared sightlessly at the sky, lips parted like she'd been about to say his name again. Blood soaked his hands, blood he had spilled. A sound tore out of him. Not a scream, not a sob, but something feral and shattered that split the night apart. He rocked back and forth with her body clutched to his chest, whispering apologies that would never reach her. "I didn't see you," he choked. "I thought you were... I didn't know." The earth did not forgive him. The coven arrived to find their golden child dead in the arms of the monster she loved. And in that moment, they did not see an accident. They saw proof that loving him meant death. They tore her from his arms and burned her before the sun rose. They cursed him over her ashes. The curse had been written, sealed as her ashes blew away with the wind. It was carved into his hands, into his memory, into every lifetime that followed. From that night on, Kavari Nightborn never again lost control in battle, because the first time he did, he killed the only woman he had ever loved. Nyxara collapsed to her knees, not from weakness, from the weight of a memory that did not belong to this lifetime, and yet lived in her bones like it had never left. The forest around her blurred, firelight, screaming, the smell of blood and fear choking the air. And him, not the controlled, distant vampire who watched her now like she was made of glass, but Kavari unbound, power raging off him in violent waves, eyes wild, mouth stained red, a god cornered by terror, fighting not to die, and losing himself in the process. She remembered running, not because she was afraid of him, because she was afraid for him. "Kavari!" Her past voice echoed inside her skull. "Stop! Please! Look at me!" Her present body shook as the memory forced itself whole. She saw herself step in front of him, hands raised, heart open, choosing him, and then impact. Pain didn't come. There was no scream, just the sudden, awful realization of falling, of the world tilting sideways, of stone rushing up too fast. Nyxara screamed aloud and doubled over, palms slamming into the earth. Kavari was at her side instantly, then stopped. Stopped himself. He knelt a careful distance away, fists clenched so tightly the ground beneath them cracked. "You remember," he said hoarsely. It wasn't a question. Nyxara lifted her face to him, tears streaming unchecked. "You killed me," she whispered. The words landed like an execution. "Yes." He bowed his head. No excuses, no defense, no attempt to soften it. "I didn't know it was you," he said quietly, "but that does not absolve me." Her chest hurt, not with fear, with the unbearable grief of understanding. "You loved me," she said. "I loved you," he corrected softly. "I love you still." That was worse. Nyxara staggered to her feet, shaking her head violently. "I died trying to save you," she choked. "And you've been punishing yourself ever since." "Yes." "Why keep finding me?" she demanded. "Why not let me live without you?" Kavari looked up then, and she saw it, the truth he never spoke. "Because fate will not allow it," he said. "And because every time I try to stay away, the world finds another way to put you in danger." Her breath caught. "You think loving me dooms me?" she whispered. "I know it does," he replied, "which is why I will never touch you unless you ask me to, never bind you, never claim you, never compel you." Tears fell freely now, hot and relentless. "You think that makes it better?" "No," he said. "I think it makes it bearable." Silence stretched between them, thick and fragile. Nyxara pressed her hand to her chest, right over her heart. "I don't hate you," she admitted shakily. "And that terrifies me." Kavari's eyes closed briefly, like the words hurt more than any blade. "You should hate me," he murmured. She stepped closer before she could stop herself, close enough to feel the cold of him, close enough to feel the pull that had crossed centuries. "If I love you again," she said, voice breaking, "I don't know if I'll survive it." Kavari did not move, did not reach for her. "I will not ask you to," he said. "I will protect you. That is all." Her hands trembled at her sides. "Fate is cruel," she whispered. "It makes the man who killed me the only one who has ever loved me completely." Kavari swallowed. "And it makes the woman I killed the only one who can save me." Nyxara turned away, pressing her fists to her eyes. "Then fate can wait," she said, "because I need to learn how to live with this first." She walked away. Kavari stayed where he was long after she disappeared into the trees. He did not follow, because loving her meant letting her walk away, even when every part of him screamed to beg her not to. And somewhere deep within fate itself, something ancient smiled, because the hardest kind of love had finally begun. The oldest coven did not arrive with fire. They arrived as a memory. Nyxara felt them before she saw them. The air tightening, magic crawling under her skin like something waking up after a long sleep. The forest went unnaturally quiet, wolves pulling back instinctively as symbols burned themselves into the ground at the edge of the pack's territory. Circles, ancient ones. Her chest ached. Kavari, her instincts screamed. But he did not come. Not because he couldn't. Because he had promised not to interfere unless she asked. And the coven knew that. 3 women stepped forward, ageless, pale, power clinging to them like smoke that never dispersed. They wore white, the color of purity, of lies told beautifully. "Nyxara," the center witch said gently, as if greeting a long-lost child. "Or should we call you Alethea?" Nyxara's jaw tightened. "You don't get to use that name." A smile curved the witch's lips, satisfied. "You remember," she said. "Good. That will make this easier." The witches raised their hands together. Magic flared, and Nyxara screamed, not because it hurt, but because it remembered for her. They showed her everything, not just the moment of her death, but the moments before. Kavari laughing with her, Kavari holding her hand, Kavari teaching her how to shield her magic. And then, the rage, the fear, the strike. Her own body flying through the air, her skull meeting stone. Nyxara fell to her knees, gasping, tears soaking the ground. "You loved him," one witch said softly, "and he killed you." "That was an accident," Nyxara sobbed, even as the words tore her apart. "Was it?" another asked coolly. "Or was it inevitable?" They circled her like judges who had already reached a verdict. "He has power without restraint," the first witch continued, "and you are the price fate demands every time." Nyxara shook her head. "He's changed." "Because he's afraid," the third witch said, "afraid of becoming what he truly is." They knelt before her, not in reverence, in manipulation. "You were meant to lead us," the first witch said. "You were meant to reshape magic itself. Instead you died for love, for nothing," the other said in disgust. Her voice hardened. "And now fate mocks us by returning you to him again." Nyxara looked up through her tears. "Then why not let me go?" The witches exchanged glances, because this was the part they had not told her yet. "Because," the center witch said slowly, "the curse does not end with his suffering." Nyxara's breath hitched. "If you love him freely," the witch continued, "and weep tears of sorrow after giving yourself to him." Nyxara's heart slammed painfully. "He becomes a Tribrid," the witch finished, "and the balance of the supernatural world collapses." The truth landed like a blade. "So, I'm a trigger," Nyxara whispered. "Not a person." "You are the loophole," the witch corrected, "and loopholes must be closed." Nyxara surged to her feet, magic crackling violently around her. "You don't own me," she snarled. "You never did." The witch's smiles vanished. "We made you," one snapped. "We bound your soul to fate so the world would be protected from him." "And look how that turned out," Nyxara shot back. "You turned love into a weapon." The ground trembled. Somewhere far away, Kavari felt it. Felt her rage spike. Felt her grief fracture into something dangerous. And still, he did not come, because if he crossed that line now, it would prove the coven right. Nyxara stood shaking, tears burning her eyes. "You cursed him using me," she said quietly. "And now you want to use me again." "Yes," the witch said simply, "because if you choose him, you doom us all." Nyxara laughed, broken, sharp, fearless. "Then you should be afraid," she said. The coven stiffened. "Because the one thing you never planned for," Nyxara whispered, power rising like a storm around her, "is that I might choose him anyway." The witches vanished in a rush of displaced air, leaving scorched symbols behind. Nyxara collapsed, sobbing, hands pressed to the earth. And this time, she did not call his name. But Kavari came. He appeared at the edge of the clearing, eyes blazing, taking in her tears, the burned symbols, the residue of coven magic. His voice broke when he spoke. "They showed you," he said. Nyxara looked at him through blurred vision. "They told me I'm the end of you," she whispered, "and the beginning of something worse." Kavari knelt before her, not to claim, not to command, to confess. "If you walk away from me," he said quietly, "I will accept it. I will disappear. I will endure eternity without you." Her tears fell faster. "And if I don't?" His voice dropped to a vow carved in grief. "Then I will burn the world before I ever let them take you again." Nyxara pressed her forehead to his chest, and for the first time, she did not pull away. Nyxara stayed because leaving no longer felt honest. She had tried. She had stood at the edge of the forest at dawn, pack waiting behind her, heart pounding as the road stretched forward, empty, open, safe. All she had to do was walk away, and yet her feet would not move, because everywhere she went, he was already there, in the way the night softened instead of biting, in how danger curved away from her like it was afraid, in the quiet, aching certainty that someone was loving her without asking for anything in return. She turned back, not because fate demanded it, but because she wanted to know who she was without fear. Kavari did not approach her when she returned. He never assumed. He stood at the edge of the clearing, hands loose at his sides, eyes careful, like one wrong step would shatter her. "You came back," he said softly. "Yes." That was all. No declarations, no promises, just truth. They spent days like that, walking together without touching, talking about nothing and everything, sharing silence that didn't need to be filled. Nyxara watched him constantly. She saw how he flinched when raised voices echoed, how he turned away from bloodshed unless forced, how every choice he made bent toward protecting her freedom, not claiming her, not binding her, choosing restraint every single time. And slowly, unbearably, she understood. He was not dangerous because he lacked control. He was dangerous because he had too much, and still chose gentleness. The night she chose him, there was no moon, only stars. They sat by the fire, far from the pack, the world narrowed to breath and warmth and the truth pressing against her ribs. "You know what happens if you love me," Kavari said quietly, eyes fixed on the flames. "I will not pretend otherwise." Nyxara swallowed. "I know. You know it could make me unstoppable. Yes. You know they will try to kill you for it. I know. And you know," his voice broke just slightly, "that loving me has killed you before." Nyxara reached for his hand. He froze. She placed it against her chest, right over her heart. "Listen," she said. He did. Her heartbeat was steady, strong. "I am not choosing you because of fate," she said firmly. "I am choosing you because I see you." Tears burned her eyes, but she didn't look away. "I see a man who has spent centuries punishing himself for one moment of loss. I see love so careful it hurts, and I refuse to let fear decide my life again." Kavari's breath shuddered. "I won't survive losing you," he whispered. She stepped closer. "Then don't lose me," she said. "Stand with me." He shook his head. "Nyxara." "I choose you," she said, voice unwavering. "Not because I'm meant to, not because it will save you, but because I love you, completely, freely, and without asking the world for permission." Silence swallowed them. Then Kavari knelt, not as a king, not as a god, as a man offering his heart without defense. "If you ask me to stop," he said, "I will, even now." Nyxara cupped his face, tears spilling at last. "Don't stop," she whispered. That was consent. That was choice. That was love given without chains. He rose slowly, reverently, as if she were sacred. When he kissed her, it was not hunger. It was gratitude. It was grief and hope braided together. The world did not end that night. It held its breath. And Nyxara gave herself to him knowing this love might cost her life. This choice might remake him, and the morning might never come the same again. But for the first time in all her lives, she chose love without fear. Nyxara did not wake up that morning after they had loved each other. She fell inward, into fire and memory and voices older than language. Her body lay still beneath moonlight, breath shallow, eyes closed, while her soul stood before the ancestors of the first coven. They were not kind. They were not cruel. They were tired. You know how this ends, they told her. She saw it. The attack, the betrayal, the moment she would rise to shield him again and die for it, just as she always had. Tears burned in her eyes even there, in the realm of memory. There has to be another way, Nyxara pleaded. I won't let him become a monster for loving me. The ancestors did not answer. Instead, they showed her the present. The forest exploded into chaos. The 3 witches returned, not alone. Vampires hungry for dominance, wolves twisted by fear, all united by the same terror. If he rises, none of us will rule again. They did not aim for Kavari first. They aimed for her body. Kavari felt it the instant the boundary broke. He did not hesitate. He did not strategize. He went feral. The night bent around him as he tore through them. Power unleashed, witch fire and blood and shadow colliding in devastation. But even as he killed, his body never left hers. He stood over Nyxara like a living wall. When that was no longer enough, he dropped to his knees and covered her with himself. Claws tore into his back, blades pierced his sides, magic burned through his bones. Still, he did not move. "Get away from her!" he roared, not as a king, not as a god, but as a man who had already decided how this would end. They overwhelmed him, not because he was weak, but because he was protecting her. When the final blow struck, he collapsed fully over her, blood soaking into the earth, his body curved around hers in instinctive shelter. He did not fight anymore. He only breathed, shallow, fading, forehead pressed to hers. In the ancestral realm, silence fell. They saw it too. The ancestors watched Kavari die without knowing it would save him. And for the first time since the curse was cast, they bowed. This one does not seek power, they said. He gives his life without demand. The bond shattered. Go, they told her gently. Choose. Nyxara gasped back into her body. The first thing she felt was blood, warm, everywhere. Kavari! Her voice broke. He did not answer. She saw him then, broken, dying, still shielding her even now. A sound tore out of her that was not human. She cradled his face, shaking violently. No, no, please, please don't. Her tears fell freely, not because of fate, not because of prophecy, but because she had finally seen the truth. He would die for her, even if it meant loving her was the end. Her sobs turned into a wail of pure grief. The tears hit his skin, and the world screamed. Power erupted, ancient, furious, impossible. Bones cracked and reforged, blood ignited, magic howled through flesh and soul. Kavari gasped, body arching as life slammed back into him. Witch fire burned through his veins. The wolf awakened. The vampire rose reborn. Nyxara clung to him, sobbing as the surge passed through them both. The prophecy was fulfilled, not by domination, but by sorrow born of love. When Kavari finally opened his eyes, they were no longer just one thing, they were everything. And Nyxara wept into his chest, unaware that fate itself had just lost its last argument. Days passed after the incident. Kavari did not touch her. That was the first thing Nyxara noticed. Not when she woke. She expected pain, exhaustion, the echo of magic in her veins. But later, when the world settled and he still stood several steps away, hands clasped behind his back like a man guarding a door instead of sharing a bed. He watched her constantly, but never came closer. When she reached for him, he moved first, not back, not away, but aside, as if standing directly before her was no longer allowed. Nyxara said nothing at first. She waited. She watched him flinch when her pulse spiked, how his breath changed when she laughed, how his jaw tightened every time she stumbled, even slightly. It was fear, not of her, of himself. Still, the silence grew sharp. By the third night, it cut too deep to ignore. "Did you lie to me?" The words were quiet, but they shattered the room. Kavari froze. Nyxara didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse. She simply looked at him, eyes bright with the kind of pain that came from believing in something too much. "Did you say you loved me?" she continued. "Because you needed the prophecy fulfilled?" His head snapped up. "No." "Then why won't you touch me?" she asked. "Why won't you look at me like you did before?" He crossed the room in 2 strides, then stopped himself just short of her. Because he could feel it. The power. It coiled beneath his skin, restless, alive, answering emotion before thought. "I'm afraid," he said. The admission cost him more than blood ever had. "I can feel everything now," he continued, voice rough. "Your heartbeat, your breath, the way your blood warms when you're angry, when you're afraid." His hands trembled. "I killed you once without meaning to. I will not risk doing it again." Nyxara's throat tightened. "So you're punishing yourself," she whispered, "and calling it protection." He closed his eyes. "If I lost you now," he said, "there would be nothing left to stop what I'd become." Silence stretched between them, heavy, aching. Then Nyxara stepped forward. He stiffened instantly. She placed her hand over his chest. He gasped. The power surged, then stilled. "Feel that?" she asked softly. His breath slowed. "Yes." "That's me," she said. "Not your magic. Not your fear. Me." Tears burned her eyes, but she held his gaze. "I didn't choose you so I could be kept at a distance," she said. "I chose you knowing who you are, knowing what you might become." She pressed her forehead to his. "You don't have to carry this alone." Kavari broke. He sank to his knees, gripping her waist like it was the only thing tethering him to the world. "I don't know how to live like this," he admitted. "I don't know where the power ends and I begin." Nyxara cradled his face. "Then we'll learn," she said. "Together." Later that week, it happened by accident. A flare of fear. A sudden spike of emotion. Nyxara. Her name echoed, not in the air, but inside her. She gasped. "Kavari?" His eyes snapped up. "You heard that." She nodded slowly. "I think," she whispered, "when we focus, when we let each other in." Understanding dawned between them, awe and caution intertwined. They tried again. "I'm here." The connection steadied him instantly. The power receded, not gone, but listening. Nyxara smiled through her tears. "You can call me," she said. "Any time, no matter where you are." His voice shook. not aloud, but within her. You would anchor me. Yes, she answered without hesitation, because you would do the same for me. He pulled her into his arms then, carefully, reverently, and this time the world did not tremble. It breathed. Later, as night fell and the distant murmur of approaching factions echoed beyond the trees, Kavari felt anger stir, suspicion, fear, rage, before it could rise. Look at me. Nyxara's presence wrapped around him like warmth. You are not alone. He exhaled, and for the first time since becoming something the world feared, he believed he could remain someone she loved. The meeting was held in neutral ground, an ancient amphitheater of stone and root, older than any banner carried into it. No throne, no dais, only a wide circle meant to remind every creature present that no one stood above another. No one believed it. They arrived in factions. Vampires first, elegant, watchful, already calculating. Wolves second, tense, bristling, hands never far from claws. Witches last, cloaked in quiet fury, eyes glowing faintly with ancestral magic. And then there was Kavari. He did not announce himself. The air did. Magic bent toward him like a tide recognizing its moon. Nyxara walked beside him, her fingers laced deliberately with his. Whispers rippled through the stone. That's her. The loophole. The one who made him. Kavari felt the shift instantly, suspicion sharpening into fear. His power stirred. The first accusation came from the witches. You should not exist, one of the elders said coldly. A Tribrid born of forbidden convergence is a destabilization event. Kavari's jaw tightened. You cursed me first, he replied evenly. The wolves snarled low. A vampire lord laughed. Soft, dangerous. Let us not pretend, the lord said. With what you are now, you could rule us all by nightfall. The word rule hit something raw. Kavari's pulse thundered. He felt the pull, instinct urging him to end the tension, to still every voice, to command. The ground trembled beneath his feet. Stone cracked. Nyxara stiffened. Kavari. Her voice brushed his mind, steady, urgent. Breathe. He tried. Another witch stepped forward. What happens, she demanded, when you decide one faction matters more than the rest? The question wasn't meant for discussion. It was bait. Something inside Kavari snapped. Power surged. Fast, violent, ancient. The amphitheater groaned as shadows rose, magic and blood and moonlight colliding around him. Vampires fell to one knee. Wolves shifted instinctively. Witches began to chant. Nyxara's heart slammed. Kavari, look at me. But fear drowned her voice. For a heartbeat, just one, the world teetered on the edge of annihilation. Then she did something reckless. She stepped in front of him. Gasps tore through the circle. Nyxara lifted her chin, eyes locked on his. Aloud, she said, You are not alone. But inside, you are here, with me, not in the past, not in your rage. His power raged. You're hurting them, Fear whispered. You're becoming what they expect. Her presence tightened around him, warm, grounding, unwavering. Listen to my heartbeat, she urged. That's real. That's now. Slowly, painfully, the magic receded. The shadows sank back into the stone. Kavari dropped to one knee, breath ragged, fists clenched into the earth. Nyxara knelt with him. I trust him, she said clearly, voice carrying to every corner of the circle. And if you cannot trust his power, then trust his restraint. Silence fell. Thick, stunned. Kavari lifted his head. I do not want your thrones, he said hoarsely. I do not want your obedience. He stood, fully controlled now. I want a world where no one has to become a monster to survive it. Fear still lingered, but something else joined it. Hope. The vampire lord rose slowly. You could have taken control, he said. Why didn't you? Kavari glanced at Nyxara. Because power that cannot listen, he said, is already lost. The witches withdrew their magic. The wolves eased back into human form. No alliance was forged that day. No crown offered. But something shifted. The world learned a terrifying truth. The most powerful being among them was anchored by love, and willing to kneel to it. As they left the amphitheater, Nyxara squeezed Kavari's hand. You did it, he answered without speaking. Only because you were there. And somewhere deep within the earth, fate stirred. Unsettled, watching, waiting. Peace did not arrive loudly. It crept in on careful words, measured glances, and doors that closed only halfway. Kavari and Nyxara did not declare rule. They traveled. From stone keeps where vampires ruled the night with polished smiles, to wolf territories where elders listened with crossed arms and wary eyes, to witch enclaves buried deep in forest and bone, where magic remembered more than people did. They made no demands, only promises. Kavari stood before each faction without armor, without throne, without command in his voice. I will not rule you, he said again and again. I will not compel you. I will not elevate one at the cost of another. Nyxara stood beside him, not behind, and when witches questioned him, she answered. I am not his mouthpiece, she told them calmly. I am his balance. Some believed them. Some saw the restraint and understood its cost. Some felt the ancient magic in Nyxara stir, familiar and old, and bowed their heads in reverence. Others smiled and listened, and went home to whisper in shadows. In hidden chambers and candle-lit rooms, alliances formed without names. Vampires who believed power should be seized, not shared. Wolves who feared a future where their strength meant nothing. Witches who resented Nyxara's communion with ancestors who had once condemned her love. They spoke in hushed tones. No one being should wield that much power. Love fades. What happens when she dies again? Plans were drawn, not to attack, not yet, to wait. Nyxara felt the shift before anyone said it aloud. The ancestors spoke more often now, not in accusation, in invitation. They came to her in dreams and still moments, voices woven with sorrow and wonder. You walk between what was and what may be. She began to understand. The old magic, the kind born before factions, before bloodlines hardened into law, had been waiting for a bridge, and she was standing right where it could cross. When witches came to her quietly, unsure, seeking guidance without politics attached, Nyxara listened. She did not command. She remembered. She taught them how magic once flowed, not as a weapon, but as a living thing. Word spread, slowly, uneasily. It was Nyxara who finally said it aloud. "We can't stay." Kavari knew what she meant instantly, not because they were unwanted, but because they were too central. Every choice they made bent the world around them. Every presence pulled sides closer or pushed them further apart. "If we remain," Kavari said quietly, "they will build their futures in reaction to us." Nyxara nodded. And peace built on fear doesn't last. So they chose movement over monuments, travel over thrones, witnesses rather than rulers. They left no capital behind them, only paths. On their last night before leaving the known territories, they stood at the edge of the forest. The world stretched wide and uncertain ahead. "Do you regret it?" Kavari asked softly. "Not taking more control, not forcing peace." Nyxara took his hand. "No," she said, "because peace chosen is fragile, but peace learned, that endures." He studied her. This woman's fate had tried to erase again and again. "You're becoming something they'll fear," he said gently. She smiled, not unkindly. "So are you," she replied. "That doesn't mean we stop being good." They turned toward the road. Behind them, the factions watched. Some with hope, some with hatred, some with plans still unfinished. Ahead of them, the world waited, and for the first time in centuries, fate did not know how the story would end, only that it was no longer in control. This is not the end of Kavari and Nyxara's story. It is only the beginning of what the world will remember. A love that defied fate. A power that chose restraint. A legend still unfolding. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, subscribe to follow the next chapter of their journey. The legend continues.